Now, the sheep with thick fleeces had wool with some bounce. The sheep with thin fleeces had barely an ounce. Their wool coats weren't so odd. The difference was small. You might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But, because they were proud, all the sheep with thick fleeces would brag. We've got the best kind of grease on our fleeces. With their snoots in fresh hay, they would bleat and they'd snort. We'll have nothing to do with the scraggly fleece sort. And whenever they met some, when they were out grazing, they'd clomp right on past them, without even gazing. When the sheep with thick fleeces went out to frolic, could a thin fleece join in? No, that would be catastrophic. You could only play if your fleece had good crimp, and the thin-fleeced sheep crimp was all limp. When the sheep with thick fleeces had ruminating release, or corn snacks, or hay, or fresh green grass feasts, they never invited the sheep with thin fleeces. They left them out of the main flock, where the grass freezes. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them, year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the thin-fleeced sheep were moping and bloating on the bluffs so steep, just sitting there wishing their fleeces were thick, the shepherd arrived to fix their worries quick.
"My friends,"
he announced in a voice with deep notes,
"it is time for you all to shed your warm winter coats. And I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're uneasy. But I can fix that. We can solve this completely. I've come here to help you. I have what you need. The shearers are here to work at great speed, and their work is tough, but satisfaction guaranteed."
Then shearers Don Metherall and Jacob Heffernan reviewed their very peculiar plan, and they said, "You want wool, like a sheep with thick fleece? My friends, you can have it, in a couple minutes each. Just line up in order and climb up the barn boards." So the sheep clambered on up, then the electric shears roared, and they clipped, and they zipped, and they buzzed, and they hummed, and they slid all about, but the shears really stunned. When the sheep with winter fleeces were done, they had none. They had no fleece at all. They could start from square one. Then they yelled at the ones who grew thick fleece for art. "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old beasts. And now we can go to your grass-eating feasts." "Good grief," moaned the ones who had thick fleece at first. "We've still the best fleeces, and they have the worst. But now, how in the world will we know?" they all frowned. "If which kind is what, or the other way round?" Then up came the shepherd with a very sly smile, and he said,
"This will only last a short while. So you don't know who's who. That is perfectly true. But eventually, friends, do you know what you'll do? All you sheep will grow back all your fleeces, and all it will take is about half a year eaches. Thick fleeces are no longer in style,"
said the shepherd.
"The summer heat is too hot to have fleece in this herd. The wondrous shears will take all your fleeces off, so you can be more agile and reach the water trough."
And those handy shearers, working very precisely, removed all the fleece from the sheep quite nicely. Then, with snoots in the air, they paraded about, admiring their trimmed figures on their way out. "We know who is who, now there isn't a doubt." The sheep who still had fleeces began to pout. Then, of course, those with fleece all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a fleece now was frightfully bad. Then Don Metherall strode into their pen, for it was their turn to be shorn once again. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably know, the shearers really got into the flow. All the rest of that day, in that wild, bustling barn, the sheep gave up their wool to be made into yarn. Off again, through again, in again, out again. Through the barn, sheep were herded round and about again, losing their fleeces every minute or two. They kept patiently waiting. They kept running through until neither the thick or the thin-fleeced sheep knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, when every last bit of their energy was spent, the shearers packed up their tools and they went. And they sighed as they left, "Man, I need some sleep. The hardest work by far is the shearing of sheep." The shepherd was right, I'm quite happy to say. All the sheep got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that fleeces are fleeces, and all of their wool would help pay the leases. That day all the sheep felt lighter than air, and forgot about thick or thin fleeces on there.